Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Brendan and welcome back to the Crypto Analyst channel. Now, if you guys are new here, we go over everything that's happening in the world of crypto, whether it's technically on the chart or fundamentally in the news. My goal is to keep all of you updated so that you don't have to dig around through hours of content and research. So let's go ahead and briefly cover everything that's happening today, starting with the charts. So on the high level overview, Bitcoin is still inside of its consolidation range, where it's been for roughly 2 months now, between around 29,000 on the low end and 31,000 on the high end. Now on the news side of things, we have the CEO of BlackRock, the largest asset manager on the planet, saying that he thinks that crypto can transcend all fiat currencies, and yes, that is including the dollar. We also have presidential candidate RFK Jr. saying that if he becomes president, he is vowing to back the dollar with Bitcoin and exempt Bitcoin from taxes. And lastly, we have the one and only Vitalik explaining about how he plans to bridge the gap between Web2 and Web3. Now let's start things from the top here, because whether you are a technical analysis person or not, the price of Bitcoin probably affects your portfolio if you hold any kind of crypto. So with the way that Bitcoin has been consolidating here, I want to kind of zoom in just a little bit so that we can see this a little bit better. But after this big move to the upside, where Bitcoin went from around $25,000, $24,000 all the way up to about $31,000, we can see from these white lines here that really since that point back in June, Bitcoin's just been consolidating sideways for an extended period of time. So for the entire duration of June and even for the entire duration of July, Bitcoin has just been bouncing in between support and resistance nonstop, very similar to how a bouncy ball would work. And so the big question here is, what do we need to watch out for Bitcoin to kind of break in one direction? And what are these significant levels to pay attention to on Bitcoin? So the first couple things that I want to say here is that if you're a member of Crypto Nation, you got this early in the newsletter a couple of days ago. But if not, I want to briefly kind of recap what we talked about. So with support being at around $29.5 thousand and resistance being at around $31.5 thousand, this is the zone where Bitcoin is bouncing in between. Obviously, it's bouncing on the low end towards that 29.5, and it's selling off at around 31.5. But when this when the XRP news came out last week, when XRP defeated the SEC in that big 3-year-long lawsuit, it put the price of Bitcoin up above $31,000 for an extended period of time. Now, this was significant because up until this point, there was all the rejections and all the wicks hitting 31,500. But here we actually got a candle closing, or really two daily candle closings right around $31,500. And although it was short-lived, the price of Bitcoin was actually able to push up higher here to the highest point that we have seen Bitcoin since roughly June of last year. So that makes it essentially hit new 13-month highs on Bitcoin. So the big question here is, how do we know what direction Bitcoin is going to move next? And to answer this question, we have to go back to the consolidation range that we were just talking about. And the odds are whatever side of this consolidation range gets a daily candle closing first is most likely the area that Bitcoin is going to continue heading in. So if there is a candle body closing on the daily chart above $31,500, then the odds are Bitcoin will probably continue to the upside, and we'll talk about that target in just a second. And the vice versa of that is that if Bitcoin closes a daily candle below 29,500, then it's going to fall back down to support. So let's talk about the support first, because the longer that Bitcoin has been up inside of this consolidation range, the more it is dragging these moving averages like the 50-day and like the 200-day further to the upside here. And that's actually a really good thing for Bitcoin, because the longer that it's up here, the more that these moving averages get moved to the upside, the higher that support is, which means that the less, in theory, that Bitcoin would be likely to fall if it does see a move to the downside. Now, to the upside, we would look at some of its previous support, now turn resistance zones, going all the way back to about a year and a half ago, which is an area that we saw previous support on Bitcoin that is now going to very likely be resistance. So we're looking at around the mid 30,000s on an upside move, which I think would be a really, really nice one, considering we haven't hit that since almost 2021, which is hard to believe. And on the downside, there are a ton of different support levels, whether you're looking at indicators, moving averages, the candle chart. There's too many to mention in a single video here. But there's a lot in between, I would say around like 28,000 all the way down to around 24, 25,000. There are a ton of support levels for Bitcoin to kind of catch itself on. And even if it does make a move down to the downside, it's not a really bad thing for Bitcoin at the end of the day. But we've mentioned that in a lot of previous videos. So let's continue with the fundamental side of things. So with BlackRock CEO Larry Fink saying that crypto is going to transcend all other currencies, what does this mean? Well, we have to remember that this guy is the CEO of the largest asset manager on the planet, which is BlackRock. They are a force to be reckoned with. They have over $10 trillion in assets under management. Everyone does what BlackRock does. BlackRock filed for a Bitcoin ETF. Everyone else filed for a BlackRock ETF. If BlackRock's getting into crypto, everyone else is getting into crypto. They pretty much have the go-ahead to do just about whatever they want. And the odds are it's in any government's best interest to work with them because, again, you don't want to get on the wrong side of the largest asset manager on the planet. They're essentially bringing you a ton of potential tax money and customers through themselves. So I think it's definitely in the US government's best interest here to kind of work with them and have a healthy relationship, healthier than the way that the Coinbase situation have been playing out in recent months. Now, the presidential candidate RFK Jr. has said that he is vowing to back the US dollar with Bitcoin and exempt Bitcoin from taxes if he gets into office. So the way that I see this is that he's looking at the US dollar in its current state. It's falling in power, it's falling in value. There's a lot of issues going on there. That's a whole topic for a separate video. And he's saying, how can we add more value and more strength to the US dollar? And his solution seems to be back it with Bitcoin. Now, there's a lot of people that would probably have mixed emotions about this. Some people would be really excited. Some people wouldn't like the centralized aspect that it could add to Bitcoin. But I think that we could all acknowledge that if this happens in some distant reality, this would arguably skyrocket the price of Bitcoin fairly high. I think it's safe to say that a lot of us have these $100,000 Bitcoin predictions. But if he is seriously backing one for one the entire U.S. economy or the entire U.S. dollar with Bitcoin, that could be something that seriously pumps it to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars per Bitcoin if this becomes a reality. Now, there's all sorts of hurdles that he would have to pass here. It's not as easy as him just winning the US election, getting in the office and making this happen. Obviously, that is a massive oversimplification. Winning office is its own giant hurdle for him. Then having to get everything passed to even make this possible would be a whole secondary struggle, especially when you have people in the SEC like Gary that would be very, very against something like this, as I'm sure some other politicians would be as well. So it's a really positive thing to see that we are at the place now where major U.S. politicians and even presidential candidates want to make Bitcoin mainstream. It's a really good thing, and it's healthy for us to see that crypto is now seeing this kind of adoption. So ending this off, we are seeing an increased push for Web3. And for a while, the big argument was, how can we make Web 2 and Web 3 as seamless as one another? So how can we make Web 3 as seamless as Web 2 is? So when we go in and we create an account, whether it's on Gmail or Google or Coinbase or whatever it is, everyone is very familiar with that account creation process. And so Vitalik has come out here and said he wants to make sure that Ethereum, or he wants everyone to know that Ethereum is making plans to making crypto wallets as simple as just making an email and working with an email. And so just as simply as you can create and send emails, he wants to make the barrier to entry on crypto wallets on Ethereum that easy as well. And this is a big one. This is a big one because, again, there's so many people who come in. I even literally had a conversation with my parents about this, I think a day or two ago, about how they should be using a decentralized wallet instead of a custodian like Coinbase. And to them, they just said, hey, it's too complicated, it's too much of a hassle, and they just don't want to learn it because of the barrier to entry. Now, for any of us that have used a hard wallet like a Trezor or a Ledger, they do have a little bit of a learning curve, but once you understand it, it's actually something that's really easy to use. But that initial learning curve is just a little bit too scary for them. And same with your key storage and your seed phrase and everything like that. So I'm interested to see how he balances both the decentralized and secure aspect of wallets while also not sacrificing security to make it easier for the everyday person. So there's a lot of stuff to look out to here on the horizon, whether it's the largest asset manager trying to dive deeper into crypto, whether it's potential presidential candidates saying that they want to push crypto, or Vitalik saying that he is going to bridge this gap between Web 2 and Web 3, and Bitcoin and a lot of crypto kind of just squeezing and consolidating in the meantime. So as we bring this video to an end, all that I ask is that if you like the video, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Because like I said earlier, we make videos just like this one every single week, multiple times a week here. So definitely join us. We have another video coming out in just a few days on Friday. But until then, I'll see all of you very, very soon.